Subscribe icon for updates.
This is StratNews Global. I'm Amitabh. Revi. On the talking point today, we're looking at India-UAE relations with India's envoy to the UAE in Abu Dhabi, Ambassador Sunjay Sudhir. A warm welcome to all our viewers who are joining this live stream, and a welcome to those who will pick this up later on our YouTube channel. We're going to Abu Dhabi, where India's envoy to the UAE, Ambassador Sunjay Sudhir, joins us. Good to see you. Thanks for giving us your time.
Good evening to you and your viewers. It's always a pleasure to be at your channel and also to be interacting with you.
And some of our viewers are already writing in. In fact, Harshal Gore says, waiting with great anticipation for this interview because the UAE is an important partner. Many Indian people, 3.5 million, I think, 35 lakh, and companies have been doing successful business there. I'm just getting into CEPA, it's almost a year since it was signed. Of course, it came into effect in May. One of the shortest FTAs negotiated in 88 days. You've got on record to say that there's been a 30+% increase in trade on the roadmap, which is $100 billion. What's your report card, Ambassador, on both the achievements and the challenges?
Amitabh, you're very right that this is a historic CEPA in the sense that it's something to negotiate a complex trade agreement like this in 88 days is quite a miracle. And, it requires a lot of trust between the partners. But we were able to do it in 88 days. It's also the first CEPA ever signed by the UAE. And actually, when it was signed, it was our first CEPA in about a decade or so. We are, in any case, big trading partners. For India, UAE is the third largest trading partner, second largest export destination. For the UAE, India is the second largest export destination. So in any case, things were going well. But then, for our leadership and for all of us, sky is the limit. And therefore, this question about CEPA and how to optimize our trade relations. So it was signed in the presence of our Prime Minister, Shri Narendra Modi, and the UAE President, His Highness Sheikh Mohamed bin Zayed Al Nahyan, on the 18th of February. And as you mentioned, it entered into force on the 1st of May. And so far, the results have actually been pretty encouraging. So we have statistics for the period April to November 2022. So April is 1 month prior to the entry into force. And first one month, you have to always allow in such agreement for the traders on both sides to get familiar with all the certificates of origin and other things. So if you take the data for those 8 months for our current financial year, bilateral trade has actually grown to about $58 billion from $45 billion for the same period last year, which is a growth of about 27.5%, which is quite impressive. India's exports registered an impressive growth of about 19%. They reached about $21 billion from the earlier $17.5 billion. Exports of gem and jewelry has recorded a significant growth of about 21%. So gems and jewelry is a key part of our exports, followed by engineering goods. Another very heartening element in this is that our agriculture and food exports also grew by more than 23%. You mentioned, the target of $100 billion. But, this target was a target set for 5 years. I am very confident that we should be able to achieve it well before that. If we go by the present trends, we should reach about $85 billion in the current financial year itself. So I think things are going well.
Super, sounds... But when you're talking about numbers, there's a lot of difference between projections and actuals. Here, of course, you're saying you'll meet the targets before the deadline. But elaborate for us a little bit more, Ambassador, on the progress in actuals in terms of Emirati investment in India.
Well, there again, it's a very heartening figure. If you look at it strictly, CEPA is about trade,
Sure.
about lowering trade barriers, about trade facilitation, about seeing how to optimize the trade opportunities. But then CEPA cannot be just looked as purely through the trade prism, because around CEPA is this whole great opportunity of investments. Because when businesses come together and the understanding between the two business communities, the investor communities increases, investments also go up. To begin with, there was already trust between the two countries, between our government, between our business communities. So all those things were, in any case, going very well, and CEPA has given it that much of more fillip to our investment relationship. Looking at the figures, UAE is the 7th largest investor in India, and UAE investment in India is estimated at around $21 billion, of which 15 billion is in the form of FDI. Now, when we talk about UAE being the 7th largest investor into India, we have to also keep in mind that 7th is in terms of, so there are a lot of investors into India which have the historic advantage. Some countries have been investing in India for a very long time, so they are placed fairly high in that table. UAE, the real thrust in the investments has come up in the last few years. So they're climbing up to 7th slot I think is a very, very impressive thing. But investment is a two-way thing. Although what you hear in the headlines might be about big ticket investments from the UAE to India, actually our belief is that Indian investments into the UAE are much more. But then these are not investments in the range of $1 billion, $2 billion. These are in the range of a few $100 million, but multiple numbers. So that's very important, that it is a two-way investment street. If you focus on the say the last 1.5 years, it's been a very impressive record, because I'll just share some numbers with you.
Sure.
$2 billion was invested by Mubadala in Reliance Jio and Reliance Retail. $2 billion was also invested by the international holding company in April last year in Adani Renewable Energy. $1 billion again by Mubadala in Tata Motors in October 21, and an additional $525 million in Tata Power in April last year. And just about a week 10 days back, on 30th of January, international holding company Abu Dhabi announced another investment of $400 million in Adani Enterprises. Again, as I said, it's not a one-way street. Reliance has also invested $2 billion in petrochemicals JV in the UAE. So the size of investments is big and getting bigger, and it's a two-way street. That's important.
Talking about a two-way street, Ambassador, both countries are doing energy transitions, one as a producer, one as a consumer. You were at the India Energy Week this week in Bengaluru. Bring us up to speed with renewables, which again have a big focus between the India and the UAE.
Well, so far our relationship has more been dominated by hydrocarbons, oil and gas. But then renewables is the way forward. That is the way which we have to go. And good thing is that we are both doing very well in the renewable sector. In terms of energy transition, both countries are, first of all, it's very important for both countries, because for us as a consumer, for the UAE as a producer, because the oil and gas sector accounts for a huge chunk of their GDP. For us, it accounts for a huge chunk of our imports. So it's important for both of us. But then we also are very conscious, both of us are very conscious that energy transition has to be smooth and has to address issues of energy access, energy justice, equity, and energy affordability. That's very important. And we both have very ambitious plans. You're familiar, Prime Minister's call for this green hydrogen mission, and so many other initiatives which India has taken right from the Paris COP, where India has been actually batting on the front foot and making announcements and actually delivering well ahead of schedule. Among the major economies, India is perhaps the only economy which has met its COP15 targets. On the UAE part also, UAE has taken a lot of initiatives. Masdar, you must have heard of, is entirely dedicated to the renewable sector. ADNOC, which is actually an oil and gas company, is doing a lot of investments in decarbonization. It has investments into Masdar also, because that is the way forward. Then there's another company called Taka. So all the major companies here together are charting out the renewable path. We also have to keep in mind that traditionally India has been a big energy consumer, as I said, actually the third largest energy consumer in the world. Our crude imports are about 85 of our crude consumption comes from imports. As far as gas is concerned, about 50% of our consumption comes from imports. So we have to necessarily lean on renewables for a future in which our development process gets further accelerated. But we are doing together a lot of things, and I will want to share with you that just about a month back, India actually was chairing this 13th General Assembly of the International Renewable Energy Agency, IRENA.
Right.
Yeah, IRENA, which is headquartered in Abu Dhabi, and this is a major international organization on renewables, which has about 168 member countries. India not only chaired the 13th General Assembly, but also is playing a leading role in IRENA. Our Minister of Power, R.K. Singh, was there, and in IRENA, we basically shared that India's effort has been to facilitate a timely and global energy transition that is citizen-centric, just, inclusive, equitable, and most importantly, leaves no one behind. India's installed renewable energy capacity, including hydro, is about 165 gigawatts, which represents already about 40% of our overall installed capacity. And then on top of this, Government of India has set a very ambitious target of about 500 gigawatts renewable capacity by 2030. India has also undertaken this goal of becoming net zero by 2070. So all these goals are there, and in addition to investing in a big way in renewables in India, you'll recall that in October last year, Prime Minister Sri Narendra Modi and the UN Secretary General announced Mission Life, Lifestyle for Environment. So this was something we also spoke in great length because it has universal appeal. So we spoke about it in the IRENA General Assembly, because Mission Life is an approach of propagating healthy and sustainable way of living based on traditions of tradition and values of conservation and moderation, which is very essential to climate change. Also, I want to mention to you that during the visit of Mr. R.K. Singh, we signed an MOU for cooperation in the field of green hydrogen development and investments. The ministers also discussed launch of a feasibility study for a subsea cable connecting India and the UAE. Under, you'll recall the mission announced by PM some time back, One Sun, One World, One Grid initiative. The fact that when the sun sets in India, it is still shining in the UAE. So as the sun moves, and if UAE is to generate some green energy at that time, India can take the advantage of that. So a lot is happening in the renewable sector also between our countries.
Well, since you're mentioning IRENA and the minister's visit, there was a lot of reporting on a renewable electricity grid link. What is that about?
So that is essentially about the fact that the GCC is connected by a grid.
Mm-hmm.
On the other hand, India has, of course, a big grid, and we are talking about connecting our grid to a few of our neighboring countries. So if UAE connects its grid to India, we are actually getting connected to the GCC grid. So one connection actually means connecting the grids, which are big grids. So this has that kind of a multiplier kind of effect. So in terms of the future, in terms of transmission of green energy, these might play a major role.
Sure. Just a message to our viewers: if you like this interview, do hit the thumbs up button and share the link as widely as possible. There's in the chat box, Ambassador, some of our viewers are talking about currencies, and there is one comment: why is Russia asking for payments in dirhams and not in Indian rupees? This is about, of course, crude, and Jaideep says that's because Russia is unable to transact rupee further. But there are reports that Indian refiners are using the dirham instead of the dollar to buy Russian crude. But that apart, Ambassador, what stage is the Rupee-Dirham trade settlement system? The RBI governor also visited recently, I believe.
You're very right. RBI governor was here on the 30th of January, and we continued our discussions on INR dirham trade. See, the thing is like this. We already have a trade of about $85 billion for this current financial year. We also have remittance of about $12 billion. After the US, this is perhaps the largest remittance from any country. We also have huge investments both ways. So it only makes sense that we settle our transactions, our trade transactions in particular, in our bilateral currencies without resorting to third currencies. It saves money for the trader and also time, convenience as well. So we have been talking to each other about these things, and as we speak, discussions are ongoing between our two central banks, and they're, I would say, progressing fairly well. In today's day and age, it's very important. If you look at how geopolitics is moving, it's very important to de-risk bilateral trade from geopolitical volatilities, reduction in transaction costs, etc. So we have found this way forward and once we are able to do it, it will be a big step forward, because end of the day, we are huge trading partners, and as I mentioned right in the beginning of the interview, that India is, say, the second largest trading partner of the UAE, and UAE is India's third largest trading partner. But to add to this, I would also share with you that we are also discussing expansion of our unified payment interface, our UPI, to the UAE. If in some way we can integrate our UPI with the the payment interface of the UAE, it will be a great help for the Indians staying here. As you mentioned in the beginning, there are about 3.5 million Indians who live and work in the UAE. In addition to the 3.5 million Indians, there are about 2.5 million Indian tourists who visit the UAE every year. So we're talking about big numbers. So if we are able to integrate UPI with the payment mechanisms, the interfaces in the UAE, that will facilitate seamless payments. And talks are happening on that. So just imagine a situation that in India, you shop and use your Google Pay or Bheem app or something, and then get down in Dubai or Abu Dhabi, and you just press the same buttons on your apps on your mobile phone. How easy life would be. So when Governor RBI was here on January 30, we did discuss these issues as well. And I think my understanding is that these issues are progressing reasonably well.
Just a question from one of our viewers, Ambassador, from Harshal Gaur, who says Dry Docks World Dubai is one of the biggest in the UAE, and they can assist India in developing our dry dock infrastructure for big ocean liners. This is also a good area for establishing Indian expertise.
I think that's a very valid question. That's a very timely question, because over a period of time, Dubai's strength in particular, and UAE's strength in general, has come from its shipping prowess, the way they handle containers. And they've done a great job. You must have heard about DP World. And their entity, like DP World, is doing big things in India. My understanding is that they're already operators of 5 major ports of India, including Chennai, JNPT, Kochi, etc. So when DP World, say, for instance, operates Indian ports, they also bring in that know-how, that expertise. And if you look at the dry docking facility, which one of our viewers has just mentioned, the kind of, I would say, state-of-the-art work they've done in, say, Jebel Ali, for instance, the efficiency with which they transact all the containers, the efficiency which they bring global products, package them, and then send them out to the reach of DP World, maybe 80 countries in the world, particularly in Africa. It's very difficult for us to do it directly from India. So UAE can then add value on this, and we have a lot of synergies in this sector, which is to our mutual advantage.
Amber, in the budget, the finance minister allocated 50 billion rupees for purchase of crude oil for strategic reserves. You are one of those responsible for India's strategic petroleum reserve agreement with ADNOC. Can you explain it to us simply and where it's moving?
Yeah, I was fortunate to be a part of the first agreement ever signed with a foreign country or foreign company to fill our strategic petroleum reserves. See, UAE is actually a key source of oil and gas for India. It's the third largest source of crude. Okay, now the fourth largest, because Russia is also there in the top category. It's the second largest source of LPG and LNG for India, and has good relations with our refiners. So the investment in the strategic petroleum reserves, which you're talking about, that happened in January 2017 during the state visit of His Highness Sheikh Mohamed bin Zayed as Chief Guest for our Republic Day. ISPRL, the Indian Strategic Petroleum Reserves Limited, and ADNOC actually came to an agreement to fill about 5.86 million barrels of ADNOC crude oil in our underground caverns in Mangalore. It was very historic because UAE was the first country, ADNOC was the first company with which we entered into this agreement. And now I think it's time to move on from there. As India grows its own strategic petroleum reserves, and as we move from phase 1 to phase 2, we are looking at partners. And UAE, in that sense, is a natural partner for us. So that's another thing which we are discussing, and I think it's another promising area of our cooperation. Yes, you're showing some wonderful pictures of the strategic petroleum reserves. The thing is, these pictures are always taken at a time when they're empty. Once you fill them in, it's all over, and then it's all only crude.
Point, Am. Since you talk about partners, this movement to minilaterals, India, UAE, France also announced just last week this Trilateral Road Map. In the joint statement, can you elaborate what is meant by, say, joint development and co-production in defense among the three countries, and also quote-unquote design and execution of energy projects with a focus on solar and nuclear energy?
So there are a lot of areas which we are trying to discuss. The simple thing is India and France relations are strong, India-UAE relations are strong, UAE-France relations are strong. So there's always this possibility of working on our collective synergies. And you'll recall that in September last year, on the margins of UNGA, the three foreign ministers met for the first time in a trilateral format. And in acknowledgement of their shared desire to promote international stability and prosperity, and to build upon our constructive and collaborative ties, we should come together and explore some areas. Yes, some areas you've already mentioned, but then there's a large list of areas which we have actually set to work on. In that meeting in New York, the three sides actually agreed to set up a forum to discuss energy with a focus on solar and nuclear energy, as well as fight against climate change and protection of biodiversity in the Indian Ocean region in particular. Furthermore, it was agreed that we will work on technology and social policies with the objective of Paris Agreement. It was agreed that we should focus on year of the millets and other things, our Indian mission life, and so many things. And there was a roadmap which over a period of time has been agreed to. It does include defense cooperation. It does include a host of other areas under discussion. So on the 4th of February, just about a week back, our foreign ministers met virtually to adopt a roadmap. And following that, a couple of days after that, the Sherpa, so to say, again met face-to-face in Paris to discuss how to take the process forward. So there are a lot of things under discussion in this context.
And another plurilateral, the I2U2, it was looking at joint investments in, I think it was 6 or more areas. What progress has been made in that quadrilateral?
That's another quadrilateral which is actually progressing pretty well. It all started in October 21, and then within a few months, by July 2022, we actually had the first summit of the 4 leaders. And in that first summit, if you recall, several areas were identified to focus on. But in terms of concrete things, 2 major projects were announced at the summit. The first was the investment of about $2 billion by the UAE to develop a series of integrated food parks across India. And that will incorporate state-of-the-art technologies. The second project was actually a hybrid renewable energy project worth about $330 billion in Dwarka in Gujarat for 330 megawatts of hybrid power, some wind and some solar, and also a battery energy system. So discussions are on both these projects. But while the discussions are on, we are also trying to focus on a few other areas like health, innovation, space, and other things. And in a few, say about a week, 10 days from now, we will also have the first ever business summit between our 2 countries. So gradually, businesses are also getting involved in this. We'll have a business summit in Abu Dhabi on the 22nd of February. So things are moving on. Things are moving very well. And must recall the very basic thing that this quadrilateral reaffirms the grouping's support to the Abraham Accords and other peace and normalization arrangements with, which render a fair degree of added stability and peace in this part of the world. So when we progress on I2U2, we are actually all supporting peace and stability in this part of the world.
There's a comment from KP, one of our viewers, Ambassador, UAE, I2, that's India and Israel, France, Japan would be a fantastic grouping. But just another question for you, Ambassador, from one of our viewers, Matara, who says, can the Ambassador please comment on the ramifications of the evolving strategic partnership between India and the UAE with respect to the UAE and other West Asian countries' relationship with China?
Well, in the world of diplomacy, countries work with each other, guided by their own national interests. So India also has its relationship with so many countries across the world. So does UAE and other countries of the Gulf have. But what is important for us from our perspective is to strengthen our engagement with the UAE. Going back to 2027, we signed the strategic partnership, the strategic agreement, comprehensive strategic partnership agreement. And if you see, we have been focusing on that. And when we signed CEPA, the Comprehensive Economic Partnership Agreement, that was one of the things which actually flows out of that. So for us, it's very important to be a factor or a promoter of peace, stability, and prosperity in the region, and also to see how we can leverage our own relationship to promote these goals.
You mentioned space with regard to I2U2. We've seen the massive strides that the UAE has been making in space. Any collaborations between India and the UAE?
Yeah, we have, historically, we have worked with each other very well. In fact, the UAE's first nano satellite was launched by one of our launch vehicles. And after that also, in terms of capacity building, we have been working a great deal. But as a part of the overall, I would say, reform of the space sector in India, which actually brings in the energies of the private sector, of the innovators, of the startups, I think the opportunities have grown manifold. So now now space is a key element. It was also mentioned in another vision document, which was unveiled by our leadership in February last year. Just in December last year, we also had participated in the UAE, in the Abu Dhabi space debate. MOS PMO Dr. Jitendra Singh was here. So discussions are actually progressing pretty well in that area. And we think that's an area where we can do a lot of things together.
Politically, EAM has met his counterpart at least 5 times, I think, in the last year or so. Prime Ministers visited there at least 4 times. Is there a greater understanding in the Emirati leadership about India's position on radicalization, especially on terrorism, which emanates from our neighbor?
Yeah, but just a minor correction. Our foreign ministers have met 5 times, not in the last 1 year, in the last 5 months.
Oops. Okay.
So and these are all structured meetings, So yes, I mean that is the degree of understanding of engagement between our countries. On counterterrorism, of course, both our countries are very committed, and counterterrorism was India's top priority during our UNSC tenure and our chairmanship of the UNSC Counterterrorism Committee. You'll recall that we chaired it till December last year, and then we passed on the mantle to the UAE, to the safe hands of the UAE. UAE also was a main participant at the special meeting of UNSC's Counterterrorism Committee in Mumbai, which was held over 2 days in October, and which eventually led to the issuance of the Delhi Declaration on countering the use of new and emerging technologies for terrorist purposes. So a lot of work is happening in that area, because terrorism is a threat to each one of us, all countries of the world. And in this fight against terror, I think all countries have to join hands. And as far as UAE and India are concerned, we are working together very closely.
And again, politically, Ambassador, Pakistan Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif gave an interview to Dubai-based Al Arabiya, saying, among other things, that the UAE could play an important role in getting India and Pakistan to the negotiating table. How does the leadership there view that issue?
It was very interesting to hear and see the statement by the Pakistani Prime Minister in media. But just recall one thing. He did mention what he said to the UAE president. He never mentioned what the UAE president said to him in response to whatever he raised. The point is that UAE appreciates our position on Pakistan very well. We can handle our relations with Pakistan bilaterally, and that's something which is recognized well.
Ambassador Sunjay Sudhir, absolutely appreciate you sharing both your time and your experience with us on StratNews Global and with all our viewers.
Thank you very much. Nice to be on your show. Always a pleasure. Thank you very much.
The pleasure's all ours, Ambassador, and I hope to see you soon. Just a reminder to our viewers, if you see the scroll at the bottom of your screen, that's our Telegram channel. You can join that to get latest updates when we put up articles or interviews like this one on YouTube. You can also help support us financially. There's a UPI QR code. UPI is what the ambassador was referring to earlier, but there's a UPI QR code that's flashing on your screen, and there's a descriptor I beg your pardon, there's a link in the YouTube descriptor as well. This is The Talking Point with Ambassador Sunjay Sudhir on StratNews Global. I'm Amitabh, Revi.